Guys, beer, sports. Join Sean and Brad as they talk about sports and share a beer. From the east coast of Canada to the west coast of the United States. Over to you, boys.
Everybody, hey, what's happening? What's good with you? Guys, Beer Sports. Brad Tesh coming to you live from the West Coast, the Pacific Northwest, from Whidbey Island. With me, as always, my counterpart, the Fijian warrior, the bespeckled, bedangled wild man himself, coming from Toronto, Sean Valancourt. Sean, good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are.
How you doing, man? Yeah, it's closer to afternoon, I guess. Yeah, absolutely, man.
Burn the candle at all ends. Look at us, just
I'm telling
down
you,
rear careers and doing this on our side jobs, mornings, afternoon, nights, evenings.
So, the big thing right now happening here is that, I was bragging to you yesterday at how warm it was here, about 60 degrees. Today, it's already -2 degrees Celsius, and it's snowing.
So 60 degrees Fahrenheit and then -2, and that makes it like 34?
No, like 30, 31. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Like 31. Yeah.
I guess I did double yeah.
Yeah, well, we're talking negatives now.
You double it and add 30, right? Is that the move?
Something like that. But when you're going negative, I don't know how that really works then at that point. I know in the positives, that's how it works, but yeah.
It's close, right? It's close. It's hand grenades at that point, right?
That's exactly it. I mean, honestly, it's just, yes.
That's how I like my facts, though, Sean. My facts are better at hand grenades. That's just, close count.
Oh, man. Hey, we got a great show this week, Brad.
Tell me about it.
Yeah, to be able to have this kind of guest come on is a treat for us, and I really hope a treat for the fans listening. We have the legendary Jim Tatti joining us from Yes Guy. This is one of the greatest pioneers in sports broadcasting in Canada. Ended up coming out with him and Mark Hebscher doing Sportsline. This is back in the day before we had, the TSN, ESPN that we have now, all the digital content that was out. These guys were sifting through videotapes to give us a highlight reel show for 30 minutes.
They weren't sifting through videotapes. They were actually cutting on film reels and then went to videotapes and then went to digital marketing.
Exactly.
TSN 1050's own Jim Tatti. We're talking about pre and post game Leafs, mid-period guy Leafs. I don't know if that's the right term or not. Pre and post game Toronto Raptors. Anyway.
And the host of Yes Guy.
Between the three of us, we're going to have 50 years of sports media service in this whole thing. So win-win. Look at this real fun shout out. We're going back and forth. The best game you'll ever play is a good back and forth. Bodega Brawl. It's like rock, paper, scissors with a mat. Get your fix in. See those guys, bodegabrawl.com. Find them on social media at Bodega Brawl on Facebook and Instagram. Get your orders in. Tell them we sent you. I'm sure Andy and the fellas can get your order in the mail quickly. I just picked up another one yesterday just to have on hand and give out to somebody. So support our friends. There are game stores everywhere, online. Get on before the next juggernaut hits. You don't want to be behind this game, folks.
Hey, everybody. Wow, we got Mr. Jim Tatti on the show right now. He is the host of Leafs Game Night, Raptors Game Night, Yes Guy. Very honored to have him on. Jim, how are you?
I'm doing great. And I was until I appeared here, and all of a sudden it took a downturn. But nonetheless, happy to be here. Nice to be with Sean and Brad.
I always like to say your weekend's going to get better from here, Jim. That's how it goes for us.
That's it.
Things will be looking up in about 20 minutes.
Yes, sir.
You're starting it off at the lowest of the low. You're just going to climb all the way up after your appearance on Guys Beer Sports. It's perfect.
What he said.
Jim, 47
yes,
years. 47 years in sports broadcasting. I mean, this is as long as I've been around, almost. Brad would like to say I'm 55, but we'll see there. Tell us how you got started and what has kept you going all these years in sports broadcasting.
I think the easier one is what keeps you going. It's the curiosity. It's what's next. It's never because I think 99.9% of the work I've done is disposable. So as soon as it comes out of your mouth, it's gone, right? It's not, there's no residual. It's live programming, and it replaces itself every day or every game. So what drives you forward is the quest to see what happens next. So I don't really look back a whole bunch. I have been asked that a number of times. As you get older, people want to know how it started, and quite frankly, how it started doesn't exist anymore. So, and when I teach, and I do that from time to time, I always say, "Here's what happened to me," or "Here's the road I went down. Do not try to copy this because the road got washed out. It's not there anymore. But take the theory." So I was a shy kid, and I wanted to. I didn't like the shyness. It was bothering me because I could see that it was getting in the way of me doing anything really. So I thought I had this interest in sports, and I liked music. I liked how things sounded and how they were presented. More so audio than visual back then, because we're talking about 1975, and some of the visuals weren't very how do I say this? They weren't very up to date, or they didn't seem to go anywhere. It was generally film, and film's restrictive. It didn't sort of fit the thought pattern I had. My thought pattern was, when I got into television, luckily enough, there was the birth of videotape. In fact, the first TV station I worked at that was in Halifax, and they opened what was the Metro Center, called the Metro Center then. I don't know what it's called now, but it's still around. And I had the guy shoot the opening ceremonies and the opening game. And my boss came up to me and said, "You used 3,000 feet." And I went, "What does that mean?" He said, "Well, that's your monthly allotment." I said, "Well, thanks for telling me." And I thought, well, how does this work? Like you shoot 15 seconds of something and try to make it look like something else? That didn't make any sense. Luckily, videotape was born within a month of that, and then I could shoot whatever I wanted. I didn't understand the premise of the limitations of film. You had to shoot it by a certain time. It had to be developed, and you couldn't really shoot everything because you had an allotment of a number of feet you could use every month, which I thought was just. I'm just lucky. If I was born 10 years younger or 10 years earlier, I would have been in trouble.
Yeah,
I would have had no career because I didn't.
Yeah.
My brain didn't work that way, and so I'm going to bounce around. But a lot of things that I'll tell you are how the brain works. So that's why this laptop thing here is great, because I really grew up in the manual world. But when this little laptop thing came around, it's like, oh, now I can do stuff the way my brain works as opposed to the other way. And that's how it was with film. Film was the other way. I wanted to see the highlights. And I said, "How did you do that?" He said, "Well, what we would do is we'd shoot, we'd make it, we'd cut it so it would look like a goal, but it wasn't the goal." I went, "Who cares? Why would you do that?" So and this is like 7 or 8 years into my career. I started in radio, so I'll just go back. And as I tried to get over the shyness, I went to Mohawk College in Hamilton and started in Simcoe, Ontario, CHNR. And was a newscaster, sportscaster, very shy, and I had to get used to how I sounded, and just as you start, it's probably like a lot of other, I don't know if phobia is the right word, but a lot of other things that get in your way mentally. As soon as you start to chip at them very slowly, and take it step by step, all of a sudden, and this is probably the lesson in life, is things can turn around.
right.
You push the momentum very slowly the other way, and then it got into I'm challenging myself, and then once I admitted that, then it was excuse me, a daily thing to sort of challenge yourself to go further. So if I did that yesterday, what could I do the next day? And quite frankly, when I got into sports, which was my second job, oddly enough, the guy who hired me was my best friend who hired me at CHNR in Simcoe. He went to Hamilton. I followed him there. He became the sports director in Hamilton. And then he left, and I got his job. So
Well, that worked out well.
Well, for me it did, yeah. But that's the first 8 months of my career, and so I'm going to bounce around, but I'm trying to make sense of this. The morning and afternoon sports run back then would have been 6:30, 7:30, 8:39. So what is that? Seven casts, and then you come back in the afternoon, which is some sort of punishment, really, because you're up at 4 or 5 in the morning. You go to work, you go back home, you have a nap, and then you go back in, and it'll be like 4 4:35, 5:30, 6:30. So let's say another six or seven more. So when you're on the air 14 times a day, several things are going to happen there. What you're going to do is, because you're writing your own copy, nobody's handing you the copy, you're writing it, and first challenge is to stay awake in the morning. So I'm a night guy, right? I was born at 11:15 at night. That's the record shows that. And throughout my career, at 11:15 at night, I wake up. I go, hey, let's go. 10:30, not so sharp. At 11:15, let's go. And luckily enough, my show was at 11:30 on Global all those years. So in the morning, you would write, and then you'd have the battle is to stay awake. So one of the ways to do that is write new copy each time. So think about this. If you've got 7 3.5-minute sportscasts, and some of them would be 3.5, some would be 2.5 because of the bottom of the hour was tighter. If you had to rewrite that stuff 7 times, and I always did, I never read the same thing twice. I still don't to this day. If you had to do that every day for a year, think of the difference in how you would write it and how you would read it in a year. It's phenomenal, really. It's I don't know how to describe or come up with a comparable, but that's just the morning shift. Now you're doing it 6 more times in the afternoon. So you are writing 13 sportscasts a day, and they're all different. And I mean totally different. It's not, I'm going to change the word here. You would just throw it all up in the air and do it all over again.
Even though it's the same. Yeah, like even though it's the same scores.
Yeah, so,
wow.
Yeah, we're leading with this now, and next time I'm going to lead with this, and it's not just the copy; it's how you presented it. So there were many different tricks I had. Sometimes I would just start with copy. Sometimes I would start with a piece of sound. I mean, because I looked at it this way: if I'm not interested, how is anybody else going to be interested?
Yeah,
so
that's great.
One of my lines is, "I'm laughing, you're laughing." Because if I'm laughing on the air, pretty good chance you're going to laugh with me.
Yeah,
right?
That's human nature, right? Yeah. Growing up in my work career, I was in the trades a lot, so spent a lot of time on construction sites. And I can tell you, I appreciate that approach, because listening to daytime radio and hearing the same thing every 30 minutes is exhausting. It just feels like you're living a Groundhog's Day. And so thanks for running that out and making that the standard, because, man, some guys don't, and it's excruciating.
It's a tune out.
Yeah.
When you're listening to it, here's the other concept is, when you're doing any of this, understand there's somebody actually listening to it. So you're actually working for them, not for yourself. I mean, that's just sort of an ego thing, that if you think that I'm going to do this and people are going to like it, no, you have to make it engaging. So engaging and entertaining are the two goals of any time you're on the air, anytime there's an open mic, just because you want people to listen to what you're saying. I think when I started, there were people that would, were very scripted and I call it talking at people. There's nothing I do where I talk at people. I talk with people. I always say I don't do sports talk. I do sports conversation. I'm going to phrase things so that you're either going to have a question or you're going to want to hear what happens next. I mean, I'm not going to say this is the way you do it. You do it your own way, right?
Yeah, that really rang home for me when we started doing this podcast. It's one of the first episodes we did. I like to have conversations also. I don't like talking to people necessarily. And someone that I know personally parroted back something that I had said to Sean just in passing, and they told me they laughed about it for 5 minutes while they were driving. And it was something that I remembered when they said it, but I wasn't saying it for that effect. It was just this natural thing that came out. And so, there's a beauty of having a conversation and having other people enjoy it as opposed to talking to somebody. So,
well, and the great thing about all these years later is that there's an encouragement to be yourself. I mean, why? I used to always say, why would you want to be anybody else? You have one life. You better live it as yourself. I mean, I just never understood. I think maybe at the start there's a mimic routine that people go through to sort of figure out how to do this, but at some point that should wear off, and you should just be yourself, because who else can you be?
Yeah, there's a way to build confidence, and there's a way to be confident. And once you've learned to be confident, just be yourself. There's so much freedom in that, and you can really tell when someone is. And I think that's the beauty of conversation, even in just normal life.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Jim, in the almost 50 years now that since
now you've gone from 47 years to almost 50. You are nasty.
So in the
John's not
almost
great with math. He just rounds up at the nearest whole number.
Oh, next it'll be,
Yep.
it'll be your
Yep.
75th anniversary.
And you're almost half a century of work, Jim.
You know, I was just going to say, in your half a century of work. No, so
Somebody
Go ahead.
actually said to me once, I did this for a friend. The guy wanted to do like a school project, and he said, "Well, you spent more than half your life doing this." And I went,
Yeah.
But now it's like, well, it is my life. It's not,
Yeah.
it's not half or it's not 3/4. This is it.
Yeah, but what a great job. What a great job.
It's not a job. It's just a way of life.
I love it.
And would you agree that that's the beauty of finding your place in life, is finding a career that doesn't feel like work? It just feels like that's who you are.
Well, that's it. That's exactly. I mean, everything I do is me. Otherwise, I don't do it. If I don't feel I'm going to make a contribution or it's natural to me, I'm not going to do it. That's for somebody
Right.
else to do. Yeah, these are all natural occurrences. No question about that.
Right. So like in your career since you started, sports
Almost
world
50 years.
Yeah, almost 50 years. The sports world has changed so
Everything.
immensely, right? Like it's a multi-billion-dollar business now.
Yeah.
It's big business. It's cultural awareness. It's all these things.
Yeah.
How do you think that the sports broadcaster contributes to the fans now and contributes to the growth of the market? Like you guys, like you're speaking all the time about this. I mean, how are you contributing to this? I think it's immense.
It's a what?
Immense. I think it's immense. Personally, that's
immense,
what I think. Yeah.
I thought you said it was a mess, and I thought, well, you've heard some of my stuff. No, it's not. It's I don't know that we're contributing. I think we're along for the ride. I mean, the beauty of doing the Raptors and Leafs games are I'm there processing what's happening in front of me, and I'm part of the game. I mean, I don't think there's any higher honor than that. So I don't know that we're contributing. You try to make sense of it, and you try to analyze it. But boy, I think any broadcaster would tell you, it's a thrill to be there, and you're along for the ride.
Yeah, I would say, I watch a lot of the local broadcasts for my local teams. I'll tell you what, being here in the Northwest, Kevin Calabro was the voice of Sonics, and now he works for the Portland Trailblazers. It's like a voice of my childhood. Dave Nienhaus was a Mariners broadcaster who was, I always feel like we're blessed here to have broadcasters that are well-versed, and they kind of just calm. You watch the national broadcast, you're like, oh man, I'm so glad we have people that are tied in. And I'll watch League Pass and I'll watch some local broadcasters and be like, man, that fan base really could have a better broadcast team than what we have going. So I think, there's definitely a value in having these local broadcast guys that speak to, where you are and what you're doing, and that are intimate with the team, as opposed to the national level of where they're just calling a game and maybe a bigger picture look at what they're doing. But man, just the local guy that understands what the ins and outs of the team are, and the third string guy, and what the assistant coach brings. That's so valuable for sports fans like Sean and I, because it really roots us in even deeper. I watch games that I don't have any business watching just because I want to see what happens next.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's the attraction, right? It's always, where does this go?
Yeah. Well, I won't leave a game early.
Oh,
right.
I refuse. It doesn't matter what it is. I sat one time in a Seattle Mariners game in 2002, maybe 2003, and it was a late September night, and they sucked, and it was cold. They were down 8 runs going into the 8th. Everyone was leaving. And wouldn't you know it, they scored 9 runs in the next 2 innings and came back and won that game in the bottom of the ninth. And it was the most fun that I've had in a ballpark. And that solidified for me, score doesn't always matter. You could see something that is historic. Even if it's not a win, you could still see a play, or you could see some kind of magic. And so that's what keeps me rooted in there.
I have to sort of shatter an illusion. I watch a lot of games, but when I feel that it's not competitive, I won't turn the game off. But what I will do is turn the music on.
Yes. Oh yeah, 100%. I'll turn a game off. I'll turn a game off. I just won't leave it.
Yeah.
By minute attendance, I won't walk away. But
I don't need to hear anybody describing this. It's a disaster, but I will leave it up, and I'll put the music on. And I don't blast the music, but I need something else to keep me sort of involved.
Yeah, something to keep you engaged, right? Yeah. I love that. Yeah, it's the live version for me is what I won't walk away from. I just would hate to be the guy sitting in the parking garage, sitting in traffic, listening to a comeback happen. It would just be brutally painful for me.
Yeah.
And that's the whole reason why I think all of us stay, because you just never know when that's going to happen, right? So, my dad,
That's right.
yeah, like my dad, I remember he would always talk about the Montreal Canadiens game back when he was young, and they were down by 4, and then they ended up coming back to win, right? So you can't fix it. He was a Montreal Canadiens fan. I don't know what to say about that, but
Well, at some
There's a
point you
lot,
were one
Sean.
or the other. And the other's on your head.
that's it. But it's true. I mean, if you were to ever walk away and then you hear it happening and you were there, can't get back in. That's all over. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, being there is fantastic because you see the body language. So today on SportsCenter, I was watching and had this top 10 list, and guess what? The Kawhi Leonard 4-bouncer was a number 1. What a surprise! But I just kept watching it because I was in the building at the time. But where I am for Raptors games, I'm up really high.
Right.
So on a shot like that, you can't really tell what the ball's doing because it's just so far away. You see it and you go, did it drop? Well, of course, everybody's going nuts, so it dropped, but it wasn't a clear sight. I just like watching that ball go boop, 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 shoo.
Yeah.
And then the pause in the broadcast is remarkable because nobody says a word for, I don't know the time frame. I should have timed it, but no more than a second, probably.
I was just going to say like half a second.
Yeah, and then all of a sudden, eruption, boom.
Yeah, those
That
are the
was-
great moments.
Yeah. Like that leads me into my final question here, Jim, is that in
We're almost done.
well, we might have a little thing coming up for the guests here, a little yes guy, no guy here at the end. But
oh well, as long as you've talked to the accountants and paid your fees, we're okay.
Speaking about Kawhi's shot, I mean, you've been at some sports in Toronto. You've been to some, probably covering some really magnificent big games. Do you have a moment or a memory that you would consider to be most impactful in your career?
Oh, impactful? I don't know about that. I think that I would phrase it as enjoyed the privilege of being there. It was certainly the Kawhi shot was, just because that team is all teams that win have this. I always describe it as what's the difference between winning and losing? Because when your team loses, I'm not saying you, but I mean you collectively, we just go through it. We do a CSI on that team. Well, it lost because boom, 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 and get rid of this guy, which is, I think, totally unfair. But when the team wins, what you're going to find is those moments that didn't happen before suddenly happen. So that's Game 7 against Philadelphia, and then they go on to Milwaukee where they struggled early in the series. But when you look back on a winning team at the breaking point of each series, it goes your way. And when you lose at the breaking point of each series, it doesn't go your way. And then we get into that sort of negative analysis of, wow, he screwed up in that play. But there's a lead up. There's a sequence of 5 or 6 different things that lead to that moment, and then the moment happens. So that is, for me, that's a crowning moment for a franchise that was on a build that really did proper asset management and traded people out to get the right pieces in. And then you see, like when you go back to that team, everybody had a role. Kawhi was certainly the guy who did the key things at the key moments in literally every game. I used to always say about him was they might be down, especially against Milwaukee, by 9. And instead of going down by 12, he either brought it down to a -7 or a -6 with either a 3 or a 2 or a defensive play that stopped.
Yeah.
He always stopped it from getting out of control when they were in trouble.
Well,
And it was just marvelous to watch. So that tells you, like, I go back to that team because literally everything they did worked. Now,
right.
all the other
He was
years.
the galvanizer.
Yeah.
Team, right?
Yeah. But he also raised everybody up to a level. And it's just, I think anybody who's had a championship team or followed one understands what everybody does everything properly and it all meshes together. And as I said before, when you don't win, it just doesn't happen. That doesn't mean it's an indictment on somebody's ability. It just didn't happen. But we tend to want to do a tear down and everything. So I would do that team. I would also go back to the 100th Grey Cup for Canadian fans. It was in Toronto, and the Argonauts, our team, had an interesting year where they just kept getting better and better. And when you look back at some of the players and the coaching staff, some marvelous people there. But it was a great lesson in football because for, I want to say, probably 7/8 of the season, if that's a right fraction, the offense struggled, but the defense was rock solid. And right at the end, the offense caught fire. And then I just like watching things come together. And you'd watch the team and go, yeah, nobody's going to beat these guys. I just knew it. And of course, they went on to win quite handily. And the 100th Grey Cup was big stuff in Canada. So I was on a national broadcast, and that was just a big thrill.
Right.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, it's interesting. I watch a lot of the NCAA men's basketball tournament, and I'll watch games, even now, early in the season, but I really watch the conference tournaments, and I'm looking to see what teams are going to get hot. Because when you get hot there, you can be like, oh, that team's got a six game run in them.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's not a surprise. And sometimes it's, game one, they come out and just start dominating and they just never slow down and it runs through. And to me, that's the beautiful part of sports is you just never, the David and Goliath is always fun, but it's just watching a team come together and win. I think that's why we all still watch.
I think there's two things that are really that I really am fascinated by is the team coming together and going on to win, whether it's a run or a championship, or the emerging star player, the guy who's new to the league, and then all of a sudden he has that year, and you go, is this for real? And he just keeps going on. It gets better and better.
Right.
The emerging athlete is just really fun to watch.
Right.
Yes, absolutely. I would say, this week we watched kind of a correlation of that happened with Steph Curry and him breaking that 3-point record.
That was unbelievable.
Because it was much watched TV for me being just a basketball fan, watching it happen in Madison Square Garden. Ray Allen was there. Reggie Miller was there, the two previous record holders. And that place was ready to erupt. And it's always fascinating to me when an opposing team comes in and their player is embraced by the home crowd, almost as if he's their own.
Well, let me ask you this, because I'm always fascinated by this. To me, when you watch Steph Curry, he actually makes that thing look so easy. But the 3-point thing has been around for decades. And until Steph Curry made it look so easy, I've never understood why it wasn't better, why it wasn't relied on more. Clearly now with Steph Curry, you better have that in your game or you're not going to win. And I know that when I first started to cover the Raptors, they might have had one guy who could shoot threes. They didn't have, that wasn't part of their game. That was something that developed over the last 5 or 6 years. But again, the 3-point thing's been around for decades. Why did it take Steph Curry to push this thing forward?
I think because Del Curry was such a prolific 3-pointer, really. I mean, he was a perimeter guy. Dell lived.
Well, there were guys that would do that. Stockton, right?
Right. John Stockton with assists.
You were lucky to have a team average 5 3-pointers in a game.
That's my point.
The center shooting like, 5 in a game in some offenses.
You had pockets of it, but now if you don't have that on your offense, you're not going to win the game.
But it's changed. It's changed the whole entire. It's changed the whole entire area of basketball, of the game, because you don't see that always going in. You see the perimeter shots. They always want to go for the 3, especially if you're down, because that's the only way to really come back. It's like
how many times do you see it now? A guy goes in the paint and then throws it back. I mean, I'm sure there are old-time basketball people who look at that play and go, "What are you doing?"
And Shaq's on the TNT broadcast, and he's very vocal about how much he hates today's NBA because the big man is phased out.
Well, it's a different game.
Yeah. But watching Steph Curry shoot, I get the pleasure of watching Damian Lillard shoot. He's another one that's effortless. Now, you guys have a guy in Gary Trent Jr. who came from Portland in that trade from Norman Powell.
Yeah.
Norman Powell and Gary Trent are both very proficient shooters. Gary Trent's got some real range to him, too. He's another one that, Fred VanVleet's another one.
When Norman Powell first came up, I remember that we were doing preseason games and they were saying, he's working on shooting the 3 because he didn't have it. That wasn't part of his game at the start, but now it is. And I always found that fascinating, that because should be such a big, it's a sway in a game. There's no question about that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, he's a big time player now. I mean, that's why we had to get rid of him, because we just didn't have room in the contract, obviously, for him. So it's Portland's gain, I guess, there, Brad. I don't know.
That was a pretty even trade. I like it.
I like Gary Trent Jr. a lot. I like what he brings to the table. He's a cheaper contract as well. I mean, it's
well, I never get into that. I don't care about the cheaper contract.
The numbers don't matter. It's all about the chemistry. The chemistry is what matters.
I think we spend a lot of time on that, and because I do both sports, I always find it interesting that the $10 million that a hockey player gets is just like people bean count that thing into the ground, and $10 million in the NBA is like,
yeah, it's peanuts.
$10 million in Major League Baseball is a relief pitcher.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I know, but it's funny when you go around with
Yeah.
what the money means in different sports. The hockey thing it drives me crazy.
Well,
It's like
yeah.
a guy goes around with a slide rule every day. You're 5 cents over, you can't do it. It's
Well,
craziness.
I think we hear about it all the time with the media, though. Is that 4 guys, 40 million, 4 guys. And it's like, like
No, at the end of the day, do you win?
that's it. And right now, they look good. They look good right now.
They do.
I
They've
personally
actually
think
all
they look
matured.
good. Yeah.
Speaking of winning, Jim, I wanted to ask you a question. I understand you're a Detroit Lions fan.
Oh, yeah.
What I would like to know is if
But
you
I'm
feel like
bummed.
does Urban Meyer give his firing this week? Does that give Detroit a better shot at the first overall pick?
Oh yeah, I'm sure they're going to mangle that. I don't know. I've been Lions history is just so. I mean, the draft, man. Over the years, they never mess up the number 1 overall, but they don't know how to build through the draft. It's really remarkable that you could go through all the things that haven't happened with the Lions, but that one. The draft table mangling is just brutal. The other thing that kills me about, because I've followed them since the 60s, and I know that their stuff goes back 10 years previous to that. But when you look at the Lions defenses over those years, especially against the divisions they were in, it's like, whoa, guy, like, let's have a defense here. It's tough. I just don't know. It's hard to
especially when
explain.
you have Barry Sanders. When you have Barry Sanders and you have that offensive line and a game manager and Scott Mitchell playing quarterback, but their defense is atrocious. You should be able to win, and especially in that NFL era.
I just heard Barry Sanders on with Brett Favre there on the NFL network on Sirius XM there, and it's amazing how much respect that Brett has for Barry, because really Detroit had nothing but Barry, nothing.
No.
And
if you think about it, I mean, go back 30 years. They had a Hall of Fame running back, a Hall of Fame receiver, and the quarterback will likely end up in the Hall of Fame. But did they have a Hall of Fame anything else? No, right?
No.
Yeah.
It's amazing. I think though that Detroit, I mean, they got a good coach right now. I think I personally
really
think
like
so.
He should be playing. This guy should play.
Yeah. Well, I think, with Brad's question there, that actually leads us into a nice yes guy, no guy moment there. If you want to take a couple of questions,
all rights reserved. Yes, okay. You've
all rights reserved. Sean's going to write you a check.
Yeah, you've asked permission, and I've granted it. Go ahead, sir.
All right, the Leafs woes. It's been a tale of woe these past few seasons. First round eliminations.
See that picture up there?
I do. 67.
Is that the last winner?
Yeah, it's autographed.
Yeah.
It's all autographed except for people that weren't alive when the picture was made. So there's no Tim Horton or Terry Sawchuk, and I don't think there's a Punch Imlach there, but everybody else is autographed.
Wow.
Tim Horton was a part of that championship team?
Yes.
Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah.
So
sorry, guy. That team was awesome. I was a kid. I remember that team.
I believe it. I'm married to a Canadian woman, so her family does no shortage of letting me know how those things work. So.
Yeah. Oh, great. Christmas dinner. Good. Yeah.
I get 2 Christmases, 2 Thanksgivings. It works out pretty well for me.
Yeah.
Do you think this year is the year that the Leafs punch above their weight class and at least get to the second round?
Oh, yes, Guy. Absolutely. And I look at the team. I don't have my notebook in front of me. Let me just grab that. When I look at the team in the forward unit, all kinds of depth there. So Mikheyev just came back. Marner is out. So my only question on the team is maybe a defenseman short. They've got good depth there. The Muzzin-Hall tandem has struggled, so they split them up.
Yeah.
They had Bogosian last year, who was really good. I think at some point they have to acquire somebody like Bogosian, and it could actually be on an expiring contract. But when I look at this team now, if it was healthy, I would say I would only look at maybe a defenseman with some kind of physical edge, but he has to be able to play with the speed that the Leafs play with. So I don't know who that is and what it costs, but if you could give me that guy, definitely second round, probably deeper.
Yeah. Okay. Brad, do you have a question?
Jim, you just made Sean's ear. He's not going to be quiet about that.
Yeah.
For the rest of the way out.
Jim says, yeah, great. Yeah.
Yep. That's when we hear the rest of the way out.
He's going to use it for his ringtone.
I'm gonna tweet you every time he brings it up. Just so you know.
Yeah. Great.
Oh,
Jim, what I
Brett.
would want to know is how do you feel about Scotty Barnes being maybe the best rookie in the NBA this year playing for the Toronto Raptors?
Oh, I agree with that. And everybody laughed. But what we've learned here is, and Raptors have drafted players over the years where you see the people on the panels just sort of go, well, what was that? But the one thing that the Raptors are known for here, and I would expect that most of the league understands it, their player development is second to none. They've got guys in that 905 team, and they've worked with people. So when, I always say this, and I've said it about the team that they have this year on the broadcast is the one thing you have to admit is everybody on that team that they have now is they're not inherited players. They are their players. They chose to have them. When we're talking about Achua and where this could go years down the road, they wanted him. They got him for Kyle Lowry. And so everybody there is there for a reason. Their player development is off the charts. I think it's the best in the league. And, it's not a franchise that's going to have, the NBA basically is star driven. And I don't know that the Raptors will ever have that number one overall pick guy, that franchise player in terms of, like LeBron, right? Are they ever going to have a guy like LeBron? Probably not. And I don't know if he would stay anyway. But so they've got some common sense in how they build this team. And Scotty Barnes right from the start is phenomenal. You have to understand, like you could look at his point totals, which are very good, but he's been put in some defensive situations. I mean, you thought that he might crack or something, but he's been really good. He's fun to watch.
He's a ball player.
Oh,
He's
is
a ball player,
and he adds energy. Like there's an energy that he brings that goes right through the floor. It's fun to watch. So people didn't know what to make of the pick. I'd look at that pick now and go, you got him number 4. He could have been higher.
Yeah,
not necessarily
exactly.
in stature or in style, but he reminds me of a young Kevin Durant.
Oh, I think he's phenomenal.
How he influences the game by not having to have the ball in his hands. I got to watch KD in his rookie year here in Seattle, and watching him live. And Kevin Barnes, he really just reminds me of that same going to grow into his body, going to grow into his game with some confidence and go. It'll be interesting to see how he shakes out.
Yeah, and the other thing is due to injury, he's been playing several positions.
Yeah.
So it's not just the same role. And that's really how Nick Nurse coaches. He's a very fluid guy. So I need you to do this now. And, quite frankly, the minutes he's getting, he's earned. And that's how the Raptors operate. If you're not going to earn your minutes, you're not going to get them.
Yeah.
You said something interesting, and it was how they build in with player development. And I agree fully with you. I think that really worked to their favor with the Kawhi experiment.
Yes, it did.
When you have that player development, you have all those pieces. You can gamble on a 1 or 2 year almost rental of a superstar and deliver a championship. And if you can't sell, they didn't overpay for Kawhi. I don't know if they ever had an opportunity to do so. I feel like maybe they did, and they just chose to not. And, right, wrong, or indifferent, you got a championship out of that deal. I think that was a wise move. But to your point, player development is so key. I think even in today's NBA, if you can just draw talent in for a year or two, you could win a championship. And that means more to your fan base. You're always competitive. You're always entertaining. You're always doing things. Maybe you're not a perennial favorite, but you're always in the mix.
So two things that come out of that. Yeah, absolutely. What they did was proper asset management. They had some really good young players, and they packaged some of them off. I mean, look at JV. JV for years was kind of an awkward-looking guy, but now when you watch him play, very mature and a great basketball player. And so they had to move him out. And quite frankly, when you go back to when they first started to get competitive, I didn't like their front court at all. I thought, that year Brooklyn just manhandled them on the front court. And one of the tricks was when they had DeMar, when it was DeMar and Kyle, one of our guys went in the visiting dressing room and saw on the whiteboard ISO ball. So that just that's it. Yep. Shut down the front court, and then these two guys. And once we know these two guys, then we'll be able to shut them down, right? So it was a one-dimensional team. As good as everybody looked, it was a one-dimensional team. When Kawhi comes in, it's not one-dimensional. And there was another point I was going to say in there. I can't remember what it was, but I just think that their development is superb. They've done a really nice job that way, and they have said that what they're doing now, and quite frankly, when I watch the team now, it's like when you're putting a building up, the foundation is there, the structure is sound. So now you're trying to find a situation where you can add pieces as you go along. So even though it might not be a great season for them this year, you know that you're looking at a sort of you've got a big building, foundations good, the walls are good, and we'll just add pieces as we go along. And that's really what they've said they're going to do, and that's what they did the last time. They pieced it together, made the trade, won the championship, and here we go again.
I think it was like they had to make that trade in order to take that next step.
Well,
I mean, there was
because they were like the Leafs. They kept getting into the playoffs, and in a couple of years they ran into LeBron and Cleveland. But I just think that they didn't have the right pieces. I thought that let's be honest here. They made a very tough call on Dwayne Casey. He was coach of the
he
year.
was a great coach. I mean, he's not a bad coach.
There's no question about that.
He was coach of the year the following year in Detroit, correct?
Yeah, I think.
Well, he was coach of the year when he got fired. He was coach of the year when he got he was coach of the year, and then he got released, and Nick Nurse comes up, and then he's coach of the year the next year, wins a championship first year. But the thing is that I'm sorry. Go ahead, Jim.
I don't know if he was the next year.
No, I don't think he was.
No, because the next year they won. So
that's right. Yeah, like Dwayne Casey got fired after that exit, and then it was a firing. Nick Nurse comes in. They make the trade. And bang, they win it all. Nick Nurse was his first year as a coach that year. Yeah. And it was unbelievable. And I believe he won coach of the year that year as well. If not, then it was the year after, one or the other. But
now you got me looking at all this stuff. I want to be accurate. I want to be accurate. So let's see. Let's just do this. Picture is bad. But the bottom line is, so you replace him. Nick Nurse was 2019-20. Budenholzer was 2018-19. Dwayne Casey was the year before.
So you're right.
Was last year. So that's how it went. You'll always when you work with me, I always do this. If I don't know it, I look it up right away. That's the value of this guy right here. So
that's exactly it. I was just
appreciate your proficiency because John takes him in. He's looking at the screen. You can hear him typing because he just types like this with one finger at a time.
Well, I do that. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you're on your phone. We didn't even know you were doing it. It was
I had to stop because well, look, I don't know about you, but with COVID, because all the seasons have been fractured, if you tried to ask me what happened in 2020, I would say, I don't know. I got to look it up.
Yeah.
Sometimes there's 2 years in one there, and it's just, it's everything's out of sequence. So I just can't remember any of it. I got to look it up. But and the thing about Nick Nurse is, I just love Nick Nurse's post game because he'll say stuff and you go, oh, that's fascinating. Like he takes you into the game, very engaging. Dwayne Casey is a very nice man and did a really good post game too. But I really like listening to Nick Nurse. I just think you learn so much when he'll describe stuff. He's off the cuff. You don't get very many people like that.
Yeah, it's nice to have coaches that way, though. Yeah. I think those are always the enjoyable. We all have the coach that doesn't do that, right? And that's always discouraged.
Well, some of them get defensive, which is bad.
Yeah. What did you think of Winnipeg's repeat victory there, the Grey Cup there?
Oh, the Grey Cup. Well, the better team wins. I thought Hamilton had an opportunity to win that game, but they made some key decisions that went against them. The knee, single point knee. I have to explain that for the Americans. Single point knee, and there was a play in the third quarter where they were 3rd and 2, 3 downs, 3rd and 2 at midfield, and they went for it, and they went, why? It's the third quarter. Why?
Yeah, Jim. I grew up in a little place called Whidbey Island. It's about 35 miles south of the Canadian border, and so before TV was TV, I got 4 channels. I got the local channels and I got CBC. So I've grown up watching CFL and hockey. And
you're old school, and you had to
I had to have Sean had to explain the rouge to me, but
you had to walk across the room to turn the dial to change the channel. Didn't you? Yeah, see?
Yeah.
Now try and explain that to somebody.
Well, my dad was on the TV turning the antenna.
The rabbit ears.
That's it.
Yeah. I'm the original remote control of my family. That's how it works. I was the oldest, the first one to come through. I was the first channel changer.
Yeah. So you'd find this is how strange the business was. So big CBS Sunday night guy, because nobody wanted to get up and walk across the room and turn the channel. and to CBS's credit, they didn't give us a reason to turn the channel.
Yeah, that's always good.
There we go.
This past weekend, I have 5 kids, Jim, and they're all school age children. And this weekend, I had to explain to them that when I was their age, I only got cartoons on Saturday mornings for a couple hours, and the rest of the time I just watched what my dad wanted to watch, and they were just appalled that was ever.
That's how we got into sports, though, Brad. That's how we got into sports.
Yeah, I know.
So I'll give you one story, then I got to fly. So
Yeah.
I do teach, and one of the courses was sports history, and we did, and so you have to go back, and I always warn students, if you're going to go back, you can't look at it as it is now. You have to do a deconstruct and remember what was available at the time. So it was the Rocket Richard fight against the Boston Bruins and why he got suspended and all of that. And so a lot of people wrote, it was a 500-word essay they wrote on it. And I said, most of you students did not tell me anything about the official that he hit, and you're telling me it was a referee. Well, it's a linesman always breaks up the fight. And I said, for your generation, not to understand that all you had to do was Google it is beyond me. If that was see all those books back there, that's how I used to do all my research. Was you'd find part of the answer in one book, then have to go to the next shelf. You have to piece together the answer. So I said it was a linesman who lived in the Boston area because they had local officials. We're talking about, 100 years ago, but 60, 70 years ago, we're talking about. So, and he played at one point. So maybe the Rocket knew the guy, and, so, I mean, that's a big part of the story, right? And nobody went near it. He punched an official. Well, could you be a little more oblique?
Yeah. I'm trying to teach my kids that research button now. We call it searched up in my house. Every time they ask, search it up, give me, let's talk about the details. Details always matter. Jim, we know your time's short. We appreciate you. It was an honor talking to you. We thank you for your time and for blessing us with your presence. It was a wonderful
thank you very much. Thanks. Hi, everybody, and goodbye, everybody. Hello and goodbye.
Thanks again, Jim.
Okay, bye-bye.
You've listened to the podcast, but now it's time to visit us in our virtual sports bar. Get all of our info at guysbeersports.com, where you can find all the ways to connect with us. Watch for live conversations with Brad and Sean that happen throughout the week, and join in with your favorite local beer. You can share your thoughts in the conversation comments with your own uploaded videos, or even join us as a guest live commentator. The GBS Virtual Sports Bar is open for business. Come on in, boys and girls.